Howdy, folks. My name's Peter Hansens. My claim to fame is probably that I'm a massive dbt fan, and I'm really excited today to welcome you two really good speakers that we've got. First up, we've got Benoit Paragard. He's a principal analytics engineer at Aginic, and he'll be taking us through an introduction to scheduling dbt with Dagster. So that'll be really cool, figuring out how to orchestrate it. I haven't actually played around with Dagster, so that's going to be fantastic. And after the break, after that talk, we've got James Weekly, who's pretty much got himself a regular spot at the dbt Meetup these days. He's going to walk us through this really cool, fun game that he'll be previewing for Coalesce coming up in about a month and a half. So we've got a pretty amazing lineup. It's probably going to be actually a pretty fun meetup. So very much looking forward to it. But so we've got, without further ado, we've got our first speaker for today, Benoit. How's it going? You said it's a pretty nice day there in Sydney by the beach.
Yes, thanks, Peter. Can you hear me?
Absolutely, yep.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, pretty nice day here. So what I was saying before is I might try to go for a quick dip a bit later in the afternoon, but let's see. Welcome, everyone. So if everyone can see the slides, we can just kick it in. So I wanted to share some a little demo and have some quick things to show to you about Dexter and dbt. And for that, I have a quick agenda, which is just explaining like what's the lay of the land in the orchestration land and why actually we might want to get some orchestration with dbt. We'll talk about the three big players that there is in the market today, and I'll give an intro about Dagster, what I learned on the journey. So I actually learned Dagster to what I will do is preparing this presentation. And at the end, I'll show you a quick demo of how it looks to schedule dbt with Dagster. Yeah. So who am I? As Peter was saying, if you can see, yeah. So my name is Benoit Paragard. French guy living in Sydney for 6 years now. I'm the principal analytics engineer at Aginic. So Aginic is a data consulting company. We are one of the dbt preferred consulting providers. We've implemented dbt for between, let's say, I think 12 to 15 clients. So we have a fair bit of experience with dbt, and we're actually always looking for data engineers, data analysts, and analytics engineers. So if you're keen to give it a go, you just go to our website and the career page. Quickly, I wanted to give a quick intro about what this chat and this talk is going to be and what it won't be. So we'll talk about why I think that you need to have some orchestration tool in your dbt project. We'll talk about Dagster in a nutshell, and I'll provide a link to a repo that you can clone and fork and get started like really quickly. But this talk is also not many things. So we won't talk about CI/CD. So this is mostly talking about orchestration of dbt in production. So when you want to do your periodic runs of dbt, this is not going to be an in-depth view of why Dagster and not Airflow or not Prefect. This is not going to be also a really deep experiment of Dexter. Like really, it's just about showing you what could be done. So just wanted to let everyone know before starting. And now let's start and dig into dbt and let's say an hypothetical example that we would have. So let's say we have our dbt project. My dbt project for this case is really simple. This is Shuffle Shop with sprinkles, I would say. But let's say that in your dbt project, you start to have quite a few models. You're quite happy. Everything is working fine. But now you start to have like snapshots. So you have models that need to run maybe in near real time. So you want some of your incremental models to run potentially every 15 minutes. and then you want some big models to potentially run only once a month. So this can be quite complex, and at that time you can't really just do a dbt run and a dbt test and then getting everything sorted out that way. So you need to have some bigger, I don't know, you have some more complex dependencies, and that's why you might want to look at an orchestration tool. And what those tools would give you is like the ability to get some alerts, some observability. It's a lot of benefits that you can get by getting some more advanced orchestration than just doing, let's say, a dbt run once a day, for example. So in this example also, we have those models. So this is a snapshot here, my customer status snapshot. This is a table behind the snapshot, which means that when we'll go through the example, that when we snapshot this table, we actually want to refresh this table, because if we don't do it, like this table will never reflect the latest snapshot. And this one is an example of a model that I want to run only monthly, because let's say in real life, it would be like a really big model, and maybe it's like I ramp up my Snowflake data warehouse once a month to run like the big models, and I don't want to run them daily. So you want to orchestrate your dbt, and what are your options? The first one I would say is, if you use dbt Cloud, you can do a fair bit of things already. So dbt Cloud provides the ability to run some dbt commands on a schedule. You also have the ability to call the API. So you could do a fair bit of orchestration with dbt itself, dbt Cloud. Some companies use their automation server. So as part of some CI/CD pipeline, like there would be some cron job also set up to run every day, do a full dbt run, do a full dbt test, and use those automation servers. Other cases are using some cloud capabilities. In the Azure world, you can schedule some of those runs through Function app or through Azure Data Factory, and there would be similar examples with GCP and AWS. You could go with a normal cron script, which is a bit of a sad face here, because while it might seem like a good solution and an easy solution, this is actually quite difficult to then debug and to see like if you have issues coming up, like to really dig into those. So, and then you have like the tools which are built for orchestration. So we're going to talk about Airflow, Dagster, and Prefect. And as I was saying before, this based on what I saw, are the three main tools that companies are using today to do data orchestration. I'm not going to go too much into detail, like there is a lot that could be said about those tools, but this will be just my quick intro about them if you've never heard about them. So Airflow is, I'd say it's the original one, the OG in this space. Many companies are using Airflow. It's been there for quite a few years. There is the version 2 that was released quite recently with like improvements. So this is a tool that's widely used in the data orchestration community. Its downfalls or its maybe drawbacks are that it can be a bit difficult to host or to manage yourself. So that's why some companies provide actually Airflow as a managed service. Like you can have you have those offerings on AWS, GCP, and Astronomer is actually a company that does that. Local development on Airflow is not the easiest, based on some principles that were kind of used when Airflow was created, and there are already like dozens of examples of how you can run dbt in Airflow. So I didn't really want to focus on this one. And then there are two other tools, so Dagster and Prefect, which are much which have been released in the past few years and are really in active development. Based on my research, I think that both Dagster and Prefect would be really great solution to orchestrate dbt. But on my side, I decided to go with Dagster. I don't really remember when, but that's the one I looked at a bit more. The difference between Dagster and a tool like Airflow is that, so Dagster, what they say is that they care about the what on top of the how. So they care about what is in your data pipeline and what you're trying to achieve rather than just how. So we don't just talk about do step 1, do step 2. You can actually use Dagster to pass data between your different steps, which is something which is not really easy to do in Airflow. And Dagster also has the ability to define configurable I/O managers, which I'll talk quickly about. And you can also do very easily some local testing of Dagster, which is one of the good features of the new tools like Dagster Prefect, which is you can test things locally before pushing it to production, which is a bit more difficult with Airflow. And it also integrates with Airflow, so you can run Dagster from Airflow, and there are some tools also to take your Airflow existing DAGs and run them through Dagster. The other one is Prefect, which is also like a recent, quite recent tool. As I was saying, I think many companies also run dbt through Prefect, but that's not the one I've been focusing on. When I was reading about it, there was a lot of discussion about negative and positive engineering. So the idea of, I think the founder of Prefect was to think into Prefect has been built to also handle like when things go wrong, which is something which is sometimes difficult to do. So that's the concept of negative engineering, making sure that exceptions are actually catered for. So now that we introduced these three ones, let's dig a bit more into Dagster. So in Dagster, you might hear me talking about a few different concepts. So one of them is going to be the solids. So a solid is defined as a functional unit of work. So this is one thing that you want to do. You would read some inputs, you would do an action and emit some outputs. That's the kind of the lowest unit you have in Dagster. And you can also materialize assets, which I will explain. And then what you have is a pipeline which links solids together. And you do it in a way that if you have, like, let's say solid 1 and solid 2, you would do, you would put solid 2 on the results of solid 1, which then tells Dagster that there is a dependency between solid 1 and solid 2, and solid 1 needs to run first. And then you have presets and modes, which are ways you can run your pipelines with specific configurations, and you can then schedule them on a periodic basis. Saying that this is the current way that Dagster works, there is some active development to move to a new, what they call API, where some of the concepts I think are going to be simplified in the future. So what is called a solid today is going to call an op in the future. What's called a pipeline is going to be called a graph, and a few of the existing concepts like presets and modes are going to be called jobs. But this is just, based on what I've seen, this is not too complex to move from the, let's say, existing API to the new one. And in my quick intro to Dagster, this is the other thing that I think is worth mentioning about I/O managers. It means that if you run Dagster and there is a dependency between your solids, you can define how you want this data to be, when it transits from one solid to the other, you can define how you want it to be managed in your application, so in your DAG. So it can stay in memory, or it can be stored locally on your disk, or it can also be stored in the blob. So you can do a lot of interesting things with this concept of I/O manager. And what's even more interesting is that when you run it in test, you might just want to save to your local machine, but then when it is pushed to prod, the I/O manager might be a blob storage. So you can have like different configurations which are set for development versus production. And the other concept I wanted to introduce before digging into dbt and Dagster is the, which is I think a differentiator with between Dagster and other tools, is the asset materialization. So an asset, and I'll just I think quote directly the Dagster website. It's an entity external to solids that is mutated or created by a solid. So what you can do in your DAGs is you can mention when one asset has been touched, and what the ability that it provides is it kind of delineates what people who develop the DAGs are interested in this part versus what people who are interested in the output of those DAGs and output of those transformation are interested in. So what this allows to do is the developers can focus on making sure, let's say, that their fact table is created properly, but the people who want to consume those fact tables, they don't need to know that the pipeline ran properly. They're just interested in the asset that has been generated, and that's a really interesting concept, I think, in Dagster that allows the different groups of people to see only to use only the information that they need. And after this intro, let's jump directly into how Dagster and dbt can work together. So this is an example of how you can do a simple dbt run in Dagster. So I'm going to jump directly to Dagster here. For your information, this is running actually from a Raspberry Pi at home. So it's like, this is really, doesn't need a lot of power to run. This is quite lightweight in comparison to other tools, potentially like Airflow. But what I have here, I have my dbt pipeline, which is called dbt run and test pipeline. And what I'm going to do is I'm doing a dbt seed. I run my dbt models and I test my dbt models. I will go to the playground where I can run this. And if I run this, what I'm going to see is, if everything works fine, that dbt has queued my my work, and now it is going to run all the different steps that I have in my pipeline. So it's doing a dbt seed, and I see directly the output of my my job being here, and I'll walk everyone through that. So I'm doing a dbt seed. dbt seed is finished. We're moving to run dbt models. This is showing me all this output. This is going fine. And then I'm doing a test dbt. And again, this is running here. I can see a lot of outputs in there. And we'll see if it works. This took 46 seconds, so I have all this information here, and I can see that everything ran fine. So if I wanted to look at the normal output of dbt, I can just look at the stder that comes from dbt. So here we could see like all the start, stop, and all this kind of thing, which means that all the models run properly. But here we have also a lot of more information about what happened. So you have this information here, and we also know, for example, where the logs are captured. So you have a lot of information about what your run did. And if I go to runs here from the observability standpoint, what I can see is that this run is this one here, and I can come back. Let's say tomorrow I can come back to my run from today and still see all this information. So this is quite useful. And the way this is working is, and you will have all that in a repo that I'll share with you, is that you define your different solids, which this one is a solid which is run dbt models, where you use the a module provided by Dagster, where you do resource.dbt.run, and then you provide your output. So you define your 3 solids, and then in the pipeline, you would just say that dbt run and test pipeline. I'm doing a dbt seed, and I'm using the output of dbt seed for my dbt run, and I'm using the output of the dbt run for my dbt test, which runs everything together. So this is all good, and now we got dbt that run properly. But what I was mentioning before is there is also the ability to use assets, and assets in dbt they have been defined here in the solid for dbt run. So here we have like a piece of code to generate our assets, which comes out of the box. And what it shows us, and it's really, I think, quite useful from a dbt standpoint. If I go to dbt run and I look at, say, this specific one, so I can see some information. So it's actually parsing the run results.json to take all this information out and storing it into its own metadata table. If I go here and I jump to this asset, I can see that this model, for example, I can see every time this model is being run and how long it took to run it. So this model is my monthly one, which didn't run maybe too many times, but if I go to assets here and I go to model, Jaffa shop, I can see all my models here. If I go to customers, I can directly see how long it took to generate my model in the past. And if I want to know also for one specific run, like why it was slower, like you could also go back to the run in particular and see why it is. So this is all coming out of the box with Dagster. And I think this is a really interesting capability of Dagster that can be great for the users of dbt. You have all this coming out of the box. You can see over time if your execution of your model is taking longer, if some models are like maybe not performing as well as other ones. So you can do all that through these assets in Dagster. If I jump back to my slides. Oops. Jumping back to my slides. So this was a demo of dbt. So how you just do a simple depth run and test. And then I showed also the assets. So as I was saying, you can create those asset materializations and parse your run results to get all this metadata being stored in your Dagster instance and being able to do analytics on your dbt runs. By default, there is no materialization on the dbt tests, but you will see in the code that this is actually very easy to implement, and I did that in my example as well. And then, so once you have like your dbt run, once you have your dbt run and tests that work fine, you will want to define your different schedules. And in Dagster, you can do it through creating a pipeline and providing it some different presets, and here some different schedules. So I'm going to jump back here. What I have in my presets here is that I created two presets, one which is called daily schedule, where I'm saying that I want to run dbt, but I want to exclude my tag monthly plus, which means I want to exclude every model that's tagged monthly and every downstream model from there. And similar to the daily schedule where I'm excluding my tag monthly, I want to have a monthly schedule where I only want to run my monthly model. So instead of exclude, here I have my models. So I'm still using the same pipeline, but I'm just providing different parameters to it. And in Dagster, the way it works is that now that I'm going to this pipeline, in the playground, I can click on some of those presets, and then it gets populated automatically. So if I were to run this particular call, it would exclude all my monthly models. And if I were to run the monthly schedule, it would just run the monthly models. So that's really useful also for people who want to have like those presets already pre-configured. And then in my schedule, what I have is, again, using like the similar configuration, what I'm defining here is that I want to run this pipeline, which is my dbt run and test pipeline. I want to run it at 8 a.m. every single day. And I want to run it with these parameters, which is excluding the tag monthly. So when we go back into Dagster and we look at this daily schedule, then you can see in the past 7 days how many times it ran. So you have like this tick showing you like how many times it ran, and you see all the different runs that happened and if they were successful or not, which can be very useful to understand if your dbt is running properly. You also see that this has been translated into at 8 a.m. and you can also see when is the next tick. So when is the next time that this is going to be running. So Dagster can help us with like defining our DAGs. Dagster can help us with the asset materialization. And now we see that Dagster can also help with defining when we want to run some models. The last interesting thing I wanted to discuss also was like how we could use those assets. And what we said before is this is a snapshot. So, and this snapshot depends only on the table, let's say here, STG customers. So what I've defined here is you have the ability to define sensors on your assets that will trigger some downstream pipelines. So this exactly here means that whenever STG customers is being updated and the asset has been updated in Dagster, it's going to trigger my other pipeline called snapshots and run downstream pipeline with this value. So what it means is I do my dbt run, let's say daily. This is going to run all my different models. But then when this one is updated, automatically the asset is going to trigger this pipeline here that's going to do a snapshot of this model and go here. And if we look at my specific Dagster example here, and we go to the runs, we can see that when I run actually my dbt run and test pipeline, the one I run manually, it automatically triggered this specific run, which is the snapshot and run downstream pipeline, because my asset has been changed. And if I go here, this pipeline is one that I've defined as having the snapshot and then a run of the dbt models. So you get a lot of flexibility with those assets, and you don't really need to know how this STG customer was updated. Was it the daily run, a run that you did like an ad hoc one, or it was one that came from the monthly? You don't really need to know how it was updated. You only need to know that this was updated, so I want to update, to do a new snapshot of the table. So that's the real power of the assets in Dagster. And after this quick demo, I'd say, like, what can you do next with Dagster and dbt? When I started this presentation, there was no dbt build, and since the latest version, actually dbt build can be used for this use case of our snapshots and trigger the snapshot when as part of our DAG. So maybe Dagster might, or maybe we need less orchestration now that dbt handles dbt build. But other things that Dagster can do is preventing concurrent runs of dbt. You might not want to have two dbt runs happening at the same time on your data warehouse, and you can do that with Dagster. You could set up alerts and retries when you have failures. You could also link it to other parts of your data pipeline. So you might want to pause, let's say, 5tran before your dbt run and then resume 5tran after your dbt run. Or you might want to refresh your Power BI dataset when your tables have been run. So all these can be linked together, and you just get then an end-to-end view of everything that needs to happen when your data is refreshed. And the last thing is also maybe the GraphQL API. There is a lot of the magic happening behind the scene is done through GraphQL, which means that if you connect to the GraphQL API, you can also do a lot of things. So here I'm just connecting to the GraphQL API to get the status of a specific run. It tells me all the materialization that happened. So you can get all this information through the Dagster UI, or you can actually query everything through the API. And this API can also be used to trigger your the different pipelines that you want to run. And to finish, as I was saying, so these slides and also the code that support this slide is available in this link. So GitHub, Aginic, Sydney dbt Meetup Dagster. So you can, as I was saying, clone it or fork it, and there are some instructions on how you can get running it locally. You can get it on your machine in, I would say, maybe 20-30 minutes, and that would be easy to do. There is a lot of information about Dagster here and there. The Slack channel is very good at helping you when you could be stuck. And yeah, as I was saying, dbt build is actually solving some of the problems I try to solve through Dagster. This is all for me. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer any of them.
Well, round of applause, Benoit. I really appreciate that run through of Dagster. It's not a tool that I've played around with just yet, but I can definitely see some major benefits to it. So that's really appreciated. So I Bonkin, their handle, have asked, it's more of a statement than a question, but they're saying, I've seen some people use the Cloud API to define steps at execution time using an orchestrator like Airflow Dagster to drive the process. Is that another way that we could do that with Dagster? And what are the pros and cons? So you get like less flexibility around, say, kind of, say tag-based filtering and things like that, or?
So I think, like, if I understand the statement, let's say, correctly, it's like when in the code, I do a dbt run through the the, the module provided by Dagster, you could actually just call the API of dbt Cloud in that case, which in my mind then is maybe they get the best of both worlds, because you get maybe double observability of what's going on, or like you could still use Dagster, I would say, to orchestrate at the higher level your workflow, but then you could have also all your all the good things that come with dbt Cloud through the API calls they will be doing. So yeah, definitely that's something that it's not also just dbt Cloud or Dagster. The two work well together through these API calls.
Yeah, I think saying that it was in references to Tom's question from about sort of like perhaps extending the orchestration and stuff like that of dbt Cloud. So that's really cool. We've got another question through from Jude. Can Dagster send notifications, logs to something like Slack or New Relic?
Yeah, definitely. So you can have you have a fair bit of configuration you can do in that space, in the sense that you can have Slacks or let's say emails being sent, or all these kind of things when a specific solid is failing, or when a specific pipeline is failing, or even when things go well. So it's really just everything is just Python. So some of them would have a library provided out of the box. I think Slack has one. But for example, personally I'm using notifications to my Telegram account. There is no library for that, but it's just a simple Python call that I define myself. So everything that you can do in Python, you can do in Dagster, and you have like hooks available to actually being triggered only when things fail, or only when things work successfully.
Yeah, awesome. And Jose said, thanks for the great talk. So you've got at least one big fan out there. So really, really good stuff. Yeah, just finally, like you in your bio, you've said that, you've been focusing on analytics engineering for the last 2 years, deep diving into the modern data stack. Sounds like Aginic is consulting, doing these deployments at many companies. What sort of trends are you seeing in terms of, sort of dbt deployments and folks kind of hitting a certain scale, and how does like Dagster, I guess, kind of help them out in that regard?
Yeah, so quite a few of the projects we've done at Aginic are sometimes on the lower, are maybe smaller projects. So we've done projects for companies where really this is a very lightweight dbt project that just runs out of GitHub Actions, because there is just a bunch of models that need to be run, and they run every day. So in that case, there is no real need of something like Dagster. But another project that I'm working on right now is, we are, I think, now at 420 models. We schedule those through Azure. But while it's working, I think we miss a bit of the flexibility that Dagster can provide us, and a bit of the observability. So it's just not like there is no silver bullet, and I think it's always like a trade-offs that you need to have. So with Dagster, for example, while I think it's a really good tool, when you want to use it in production, then you also have to host it. And that's maybe another thing that you need to think of, is how do you host this, and how do you have like people maybe maintaining it. So it's just trade-offs. But I think tools like Airflow, Dexter, and Prefect really start to make sense when you start to have those requirements of, I want to run something monthly, but this one daily, and this one every 5 minutes, or this kind of thing.
Yeah. No, that sounds good. Wise Muffins just put in a couple of questions. Great talk. If we just use dbt run as one task, then we can restart it. If, say, one of the models fails. I've seen a blog where astronomer builds a DAG with each dbt model, second part of the question, as a task from the manifest.json file. Thus, you're able to see each dbt run for each model.
I think I understand the question because we looked at that. So I think the idea is with this example of Airflow, Airflow is reading the manifest and then creating the DAG itself. So instead of doing a dbt run of one model, it's doing many dbt runs of each of the models with the same DAG that comes from the manifest. So I know this is possible in Airflow. And actually, that's something I put in my slide number 14, which is maybe try to generate the full dbt DAG in Dagster. So I've not tried it. It's kind of on my next to-do list of trying it. And if this works, this would be like very great also from an observability point of view, because you could see directly in your Gantt chart of models, like which ones are taking longer, which one is depending on which one. So I think that it could be possible with what comes in Dagster. I'm just not an expert yet enough to have done it, but I think it's on my to-do list for the next thing. Yeah.
Perhaps a follow-up talk. Well, thank you so much, Benoit. I really appreciate it. That's amazing. I'm sure, a lot of folks, you've answered a lot of questions for a lot of folks as to what is the mystery that is Dagster. It's a really cool product, and looking forward to hearing more about it and having a play myself when I get a bit of free time. So thanks once again, and enjoy that lovely beach weather that you've got over there.
Thanks, Peter.
Cheers. Awesome. Well, up next, James Weekly.
Hey, Peter.
Absolutely. How's it going, mate?
Really good, thanks. Yeah, good to be back.
Absolutely. So it sounds like you've got something really fun for us today. So how about you take it away? You're James Weekly from Amnada, of course. Needs no introduction. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks, Peter. This is just a really short little segment. So anyone who's signed up for Coalesce, which hopefully is everyone in this meetup, or at least it probably should be, you probably notice as we get closer to the conference, you're getting more and more content teasers starting to come out. We're about, a month and a half away now. And clearly it's going to be huge in all aspects, the talks, the workshops, the panel discussions, and of course, just the general buzz in their Slack workspace. So Omnada are one of the sponsors this year, and we've actually built something special from scratch just for the conference. And as regulars in the Sydney dbt Meetup, as Peter pointed out, we wanted to give an exclusive Australian-only sneak peek of what we're doing in Coalesce. So I guess the summary of it, it's a multiplayer Slack-based game, lets people combine their SQL and dbt skills with geometry and art. So it's a little bit niche. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me know in the comments section if it doesn't. But meanwhile, Peter's going to hit play on a short promo video that we've put together. Cool. So that was it without sound. Well, I think there was a little bit of sound towards the end, but hopefully you get the gist. And that promo will be coming out more officially pretty soon. So Coalesce about a month and a half away. What we're really wanting at this stage is just some people to test it out and give us some feedback, especially if you're good at breaking things. So we've got a dedicated Slack workspace that we've got this set up in that we're inviting people to. I'm going to post a link into the local Oz channel on the dbt Slack. And also for those in the Data Engineers Meetup Slack, I'll throw something in there too. So then you can just send me a message with your email address privately and I'll get you invited into the Slack. Be good to have a few more people play it before we unleash it on a much larger audience at the conference. So that's about it.
Awesome. That's really exciting. And gosh, how do you get the time for all of this, James? Like you're building an amazing, reverse ETL startup and an awesome Slack game developer as well to boot.
Yeah, well, I think creating video games was already a hobby of mine from years ago, so I'm not starting completely from nothing. It's kind of a work project as well as something I just like doing. So, spending a little bit of time, on extra stuff like that really isn't too much of a chore for me.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of fun to add to the mix of, I guess, what we do as analytics engineers day in, day out. So thanks so much.
Cool.
Well, that's it for this month's meetup. So if you'd like to join James as our speaker for next month's meetup or next meetup, just say
I think
hello
I'm done for the year. I'm done for the year.
All right. Yeah, we might sort of park it as well. Looking forward to Coalesce, and we might reconvene in the new year. But yeah, if you're inspired by anything that happened in the meetup today or coming up at Coalesce in December, just reach out. Always on the lookout for awesome speakers. But in the meantime, stay awesome. Ciao for now. Bye.